Hello everybody, it's Murray here and welcome back to my channel M Stewart Paintings. On today's acrylic painting tutorial we're going to paint this gorgeous hummingbird. I'm going to teach you how to paint an outline and design a realistic painting, how to create a blurry background to push your background back to make it look nice and realistic, how to create a light effect and use highlights and shadows to create realism in your work, and then how to paint a detailed hummingbird so you can learn how to paint very realistic and create this gorgeous realistic painting. So let's get into it. So a more advanced tutorial today, so I used a lot of colours. Here are the list of the colours I used. Don't worry if you don't have all these colours, we can make them. I will teach you how to make most of these, so you don't need to buy all these. But if you'd like to jot them down, these are the colours I used. And I drew basically an outline. I've got quite a large canvas, I think it's 16 by 20 I think it is. And all I've done is use a pencil to create a sort of hummingbird. Coming down, we're going to have some like orchids, sort of nice sort of pink flowers that I've kind of made up. Have some maybe daisies at the bottom. We're going to have a light effect. I've got 2/3 as the background. We're going to have sort of like a hedge and some background trees. And then we're going to have some daisies and tulips and sort of like nice flowers. I'm not sure if I'm going to have that flower on the right because it's a bit weird. So I think I'm going to leave that one out. And all I've done, I've just got my outline in pencil, and once I'm happy with it, I've got some royal blue, which is basically cobalt blue and cerulean blue mixed together. I've just got it pre-mixed, but it's just a bright blue. You can use cobalt blue, you could use cerulean blue, but if you mix the two together you get this colour. It's called royal blue, and all it is just a nice bright blue. And then it's really easy to use a thin brush and go over my outline. The reason I go over my outline is I don't really like having dirty pencil marks on my canvas, because we're going to use quite bright pastel colours. I don't really want black marks on my canvas, because I don't know about you, a lot of times I will smear the back of my hand into pencil and then I'll get lots of dirty marks throughout my painting, which really annoys me. So this trick, all I do is use a really light HB pencil, like a really fine pencil that's quite light. It's not got really dark lead. And then I just go over it with this bright blue. The great thing about acrylic paint, you can always paint over it if you make a mistake or you decide to change anything. It's very fast drying. So I'm just going to shade there because I know where I'm going to colour. And I'm just going to do the same with these orchids. So everyone's been asking me lately, obviously I'm back and we're going to do lots more advanced tutorials to show more like detailed stages. So a lot of people have been asking to show an outline. So I thought this might help. So as I say, like with painting, a lot of times I change things up even while I'm designing a painting. I basically used a picture of a hummingbird because I did this similar painting for my daughter. But all the sort of plants and everything I kind of just made up out of my head. I just designed things, and the hedge in the background and things like that. It comes from experience just doing different paintings, but I don't really look at photos. I kind of use the photos. If I do, I kind of take a bit from one bit and I take another bit from another bit. So I'll take a bird from one photo and maybe a sunset from another. I don't really use a lot of photos. So I'm just creating a daisy kind of here. It's going to be like a sort of a shape of a daisy, and then I have some little petals coming off. So let's just have her coming down. And I was kind of have like a tulip or something. I don't really know much about flowers, but I kind of seen some of them in spring. So let's have a bright tulip. Let's stick that in. Have its leaf coming out. There we go. Let's have some daisies sort of poking up from the background at the bottom of the painting. Let's have like another sort of orchid sort of thing. This might not even be an orchid. I don't really know much about plants. So if you're watching at home and you're the plant police and you want to come on here and comment, please do, because I have no idea. I'm not a very good gardener. So let's just do some leaves. Here we go. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create things in the foreground so we can push the background back. So by having things that are quite chunky, like these plants, as I said, I don't like that one, so we're going to leave that one and we can paint over it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some white, and I've got a big round-headed brush, and all I'm going to do is just create circles in the top corner. And then I've got this colour, which is kind of Naples yellow. All it is cad yellow and lots of white. So look, cad yellow and lots of white. And all I'm going to do, look, I'm just going to shade in all this colour. I've speeded the video up a little bit because obviously this painting took me quite a while to do. So I've sped it up a tiny bit, just speed-wise. But anytime I'm doing anything technical, I put it back down to normal speed, like mixing colours or anything like that. Now this colour is called lime green. It is green, yellow and lots of white. You can buy it pre-mixed like me because I'm very lazy and I paint all the time, so I buy a lot of things pre-mixed. But it's very much kind of like a luminous green. And all I'm doing is I'm using my big chunky brush to mix in to that sort of pale yellowy white. And what we're trying to do, we're just taking our time. Obviously I'm doing it very quick on the video, but what you're trying to do is just blend the colours together. A lot of people ask me what brushes I use. I don't really use expensive brushes, so I'm just adding more light green to the colour. So look, I'm just getting darker in green as I come down, so I'm just using much more green now. Yeah, I don't really use expensive brushes. These brushes, everyone goes, where do you get these big chunky blend brushes? They're from a pack from Hobbycraft. I always mention Hobbycraft. I should actually have shares with Hobbycraft, or they should hook me up and sponsor me because I name drop them all the time. But they're a company in the UK. They're very much like an art supply shop. Whoops, got some paint here. Let's paint over it so no one notices. Yeah, they're just like a really basic, cheap company. They're very good, very reasonable, and they do a pack of brushes that you get about 6 or 7 of these. So if you want to look them up, I think they're about £12, which is like $15, and you get about 15 brushes. So you get quite a lot of brushes, and they're all chunky, and it makes your life so much easier if you've got a big chunky brush because you can cover more space. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just roughly blending it round your outline. If you're very worried about painting over your bird or colouring them in, just leave a little gap. Same with your orchids or your plants. So all I'm doing, look, I'm kind of going around the edges, but any bits that are really fine, I'm kind of leaving a gap because I don't trust myself with my big chunky brush. I think I'm going to colour over it. So you can leave a gap and then you can use a smaller brush in a minute. So let's paint over this outline. So look, this is the great thing about acrylic paint. Look, you can still see that horrible pencil mark underneath. Look, oh no, look at that. But hey ho, look, you can give it a second coat of paint and just paint over it. So if you do get any horrible pencil marks, don't fret, don't worry. Just dry your paint with a hairdryer, give it 5 minutes to air dry, and then just get chunky paint and just go over the top. There's nothing you can't fix, so never worry. The whole point of painting is to relax and feel grounded. That's what I'm trying to teach people. I'm hopefully going to do some art mindfulness and sort of like nice videos because I'm doing an art therapist course at the moment, and hopefully I can include it. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just zooming in. I'm just using a small brush, and all I'm doing is I'm just going around my edges. So as I say, anything technical, I'll put the speed down for you. But all I'm doing, look, I'm just using a small brush. And anything like I can see like bits of the canvas that I've missed, I'm just going over. But the great thing about YouTube, look, if I'm going too slow, fast forward me. If I'm going too fast, you can always pause it and go at your own pace. This painting, I actually painted over 2 days because I kind of did 2 hours one day and about an hour and a bit the next day. And sometimes it's best to just have a gap. Now this is like an emerald green, which is basically green and a tiny bit of blue. Again, I'm not putting all the colours in the guide, but all it is a little bit, a tiny bit of cobalt blue with some green, and you get this sort of like darker colour. And all I'm doing, look, I'm using my chunky brush, but I'm leaving gaps for the lighter green that we've used previously to shine through. So I don't want to cover a whole big block. Look, I'm leaving little gaps, and what it should do is look like texture. So it will look like a hedge or bushes. And I'm kind of leaving the paint to fade out as I go towards the top, because we want to have like the sunlight sort of bleaching those branches at the top. So look, I don't want to cover up the whole thing. I just want to sort of create a sort of a camo sort of effect. Like think of the army or something, like netting. I kind of want to make like a gaps so it looks texturized. I'm just going to come around here and just sort of blend it all in. It'll kind of look really, really scruffy. Don't worry, that's quite normal. I think a lot of people think their painting should be great from the start, but that's not the case. And then this is sap green, which is a really dark green. So you can buy sap green, but again, if you haven't got sap green, you can add a little bit of blue and a little bit of black to normal bright green, and you'll get sap green. So it's just a very dark green. So don't worry if you haven't got it at home. I hate to think people go out and buy tons of stuff you don't need. You really don't. Like, you can mix paints, so don't fret. Again, I want everyone to be included in this channel. I don't want people to think that they have to go and buy expensive paints, because you don't. So all we're doing, look, if you think of it, look, we've got all this light at the top where the sun's come through, and we've got all this sort of dark at the bottom, because think of the light and the shade. And we want to kind of keep this area a bit dark, because all these like lovely flowers at the bottom are going to be furthest away from the sun. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to use my green, my normal green here, and I'm just going to block in this area. So this area is going to get less sunlight because it's furthest away from the sun. So that's why we're using a slightly darker green. So we're just blocking everything in. And again, look, the same technique. If there's areas that you can't get to with your chunky brush, just take your time and just cover up your canvas. So let's start to neaten it up. Now, this technique is really, really easy. All we're going to do is make little circles over the dry background. So my painting is dry. The background is nice and dry. All I'm doing, I'm getting some yellow and white, and I'm just creating lots and lots of little circles. And I'm using a soft brush, and I'm just going round, look, like that. And as I say, this technique isn't hard. So it's kind of, look, if that was my hand, I'm just sort of really, really lightly touching the canvas. And then I'm going to do the same as I come down with my light lime green. So lime green again is yellow, green and white. It's a very pastel colour. It's kind of like a luminous green. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just creating my circles. Now, as I say, it's a very, very easy technique, but it is quite time consuming. So look, it's not a quick thing, but it looks fantastic when it's done. So it's kind of like a test of endurance, if you kind of think, and determination, like mentally. Because as I say, look, it's not hard. There's nothing hard with these tutorials that are really, really technical. It's just having the sort of willpower to do it. And you can do this as well. Look, you can be a professional and just use your finger. So don't worry if you haven't got a blender brush or anything like that. You can just use your finger. Now, because we're trying to texture it, you can go back in between the colours and sort of lighten and darken up areas. So we don't want any jumps in colour. We don't want like really, really bright light areas and then a big gap and then really, really dark areas. We kind of want everything to be seamless. So think of nature and all the transitions, they're absolutely perfect. So we kind of want to work like that. We want to sort of study nature and kind of try to make our work realistic. So by just adding a little bit of darker green to our lime green, we can kind of make a colour in between, and we can bridge areas between the really lights. So it's not really harsh. Look, it's quite pastel still, but it's not really, really dark. And we can sort of bridge areas together. Look, so there's not a huge jump in colour. And if there is, look, we can soften it up. We can use our nice soft brushes and we can just go over the top. So as I say, it's not hard. it's just quite time consuming. You've got to have a lot of patience in this tutorial, which I hope you've got. And then look, you can get a clean brush and you get some white. If you're ever nervous about a stage in your painting, so let's just add some yellow. You can always dry it and you can always come back to it. So look, now I'm just starting to speed it up a little bit just to start going, because it's, as I say, it takes a long time to do this. So all I'm doing, look, is getting some white. I'm just doing these white circles at the top, and this will look like little bits of sun rays coming through in between the leaves and the plants and the tree branches. So we want to have the brightest colours at the top left. So think of whites, really warm yellows, and then they go into yellowy greens, and then they go into darker greens as they come down. And all I'm doing, look, I'm just making it up really. I'm just creating sort of like bits and bobs at the top, just so it looks like there's gaps between the sort of hedge. And then I'm getting some really bright sort of royal blue, excuse me, which is cerulean blue and cobalt blue mixed together, but more cerulean blue. And I'm getting some white, a tiny dot of purple. So white, cerulean blue, tiny dot of cobalt blue and tiny dot of purple. I'm just making that corner a little bit darker because again it's further away from the sun. So think of yin and yang. If one side's bright, the other side would be dark. So there we go. Easy peasy. So we kind of got this blocked in sort of hedge now. We know where everything's going to be. We've got this sort of area. We've got the bottom bit which is a bit darker. Now we're going to start working on it, start making it look a lot more professional. But as I say, we're just going to build it up gradually. We're not going to rush, because the softer the background, the more further back it will look. So let's get some green. Let's get some ultramarine blue, which is a dark blue. So ultramarine blue, you can just mix blue with a little bit of black, and you can get ultramarine blue. So we're going to make it look a really nice bluey green, like a dark bluey green. And we're just going to darken up this area here. Don't want it too dark, because as I say, we want to push it back. If we have it really, really dark, it will bring it forward. So look, anything that's too harsh, I'm just going to smudge with my finger. I don't want things too dark, but I'm trying to create a little bit darker behind my sort of orchid, because then when we put the highlights and things on the orchid, it will stand out. So again, think of yin and yang by having a dark background, and then if we have a bright sort of highlighted flower, the flower will stand out more because the background's darker. So it's a little trick. In real life, it kind of wouldn't look like this, but for painting purposes, kind of, it's an easy trick. So again, look, we don't want any harsh transitions. So we don't want like a really big jump from dark to light. So if there is, we want to just smooth it up. So as I say, it's very repetitive, very time consuming, but it's not difficult. So let's get some sap green, which is the really dark green, which was green and black, and a little bit of ultramarine blue or dark blue. So green, blue and black. Don't put too much black. Black kills all colours. Think of a black hole. Now this colour at the bottom is kind of a warm grey. Now you can make that. I've just made it previously. It's just black and a little bit of orange. So black and a little bit of orange, and you should get a warm grey. And all I'm doing, look, I'm just creating, I put a bit of grey into my black so the black doesn't kill all the colour. So putting a bit of grey in just makes it a little less harsh. If you, as I say, look, by adding really dark colours, can you see how much it brings it forward? So it makes the hedge look like it's nearer all of a sudden. And we want that hedge to look far off into the distance, so it makes our bird stand out. So I don't want to make it too harsh. So I'm just adding a little bit more green and blue. Look, and I'm just going over it. I just don't want it to be too harsh. As it dries, it's not looking too bad. But again, look, we're just trying to texture areas. Make it look like all the shadows in between the leaves. So as I say, take your time, don't rush. Yeah, so as I say, I'm trying to learn techniques on art therapy. So I thought we could do some videos that are just really easy paintings that relax you, if that's a thing that people would be interested in. So let's add some lime green and some normal green to our sap green and create sort of a combo between the three. And we're just trying to create a middle tone. So look, we've got dark. So think of it like the three little bears. We've got like really hot, and we've got sort of medium, we've got cool. So you can make different shades of the same colour, as I was trying to say. We don't have to buy all these paints, you can just do different shades. If you want to make something cool and dark, you can add blues and purples. You can also add things like greys and blacks, and it will make it darker, harsher and cooler. And if you want to make things lighter and brighter for highlights, you can add warm colours such as yellows, oranges and pinks, and that will make things warmer. So as I say, look, the background's really scruffy. We haven't done our circle trick so far. We're going to dry our background with a hairdryer, and then we've got a clean brush, and we've got a nice bright yellow and white mixed on our brush, and we can start doing our circles. So it's important to dry your work before attempting this, because you don't want all the colours to mix. So a good rule of thumb is buy yourself a little hairdryer, or just go and have a coffee for 10 minutes, pause the video, come back, let your background dry, and then you can go over the top. And the great thing is the paint kind of runs out and it just leaves these little chalky imprints. And just by going around and creating your little circles, as I say, you can use your finger to smooth it up even more. You just want it really, really nice and blended. So really, really soft. You don't want loads of paint. You don't want to push really hard. You want to just push really gently, look, and let the paint run out. And you get that sort of chalky residue. Kind of looks like a cloud or something. And these are all the sort of little light beams coming through. So look, you can smudge it with your finger. That will make it nice and wispy, really, really chilled. And we're going to just add more yellow as we come down. So look, the yellow is just getting a bit harsher. Let's say, look, if it's really harsh, we can blend it back in a minute. So don't worry. So look, you can just go back, add a little bit of white to the mix, and look, just blend it back in. So don't ever worry. There's nothing you can't fix. And let's get some of our lime green. Let's do the same thing. So look, all we're doing, we're just making these little circles. Super easy. So don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I haven't done a tutorial that I was going to do this week of a oil painting because I made one of a country path and it kind of went wrong, and I don't want to chuck it. I want to put it on YouTube, but at the same time I've kind of got to correct the video because there's bits of mistakes in the video, but we should put it on. But if there's anything anyone wants to learn, please put ideas for tutorials in the comments below. I'm going to start doing a lot more animals. Other people are asking for figures in the background. So we're going to do things like landscapes with people in them or animals in them like this one. So if there's anything anyone wants to learn, please put ideas in the comments below. And if you turn on the bell notification here on YouTube, you will get notified when there's a new video. But I'm hoping to do 1 or 2 of these every week now. Now I'm back. So let's speed up the video now. And let's start going with our little blobs, our little circles. So as I say, in real time, it might take you a little bit longer. I'm obviously going a bit quick here because the speed's a little bit turned up. But you can see the general principle. We're just doing these circles. And we're just using more lighter greens as we come down. Now, we've got this lovely turquoise. And all I'm going to do is add that to my green mix to make a bluey green. So as I say, you can cool things down. And all I'm going to do, look, I'm just going to create a turquoisey sort of version over here. So these are areas that are getting less sun. So they're a bit cooler. So we're using the cooler shade, which is the blue or the turquoise. And then to the left hand side, we've got much more sun. We're using warmer shades in the yellow. So it's always the same look. And then look, we can get some of our ultramarine blue and make an even darker version, but it's still very blue. And we can put in more blues. So blue's a good tool to use rather than blacks. For things like backgrounds, because as I say, blacks are really, really harsh. So they're great in the foreground. And look, all I'm doing is mixing the colour sort of in between to sort of bridge these two areas. Yeah, so they're absolutely brilliant for things in the foreground because you can bring things to make it look really realistic and look like they're right next to you. And then all I'm doing, look, I'm just putting some white at the top. But as I say, if you get nervous and you're worried about the paint mixing, you can always dry your work and then just get a clean brush and then put these areas in. You don't have to do it all in one go. If you ever get to the point where all the paint's mixing and it's all going a bit wrong, just have a break for 5 minutes. Just dry your work. So I'm just using my fingers just to make it nice and smooth. And the thing with acrylics, you can see me going over it, and as I say, it's very repetitive. They're absorbing the colours underneath. So a lot of people go, how did you get it so bright? Well, the reason I get it so bright sometimes is simply that I've done it 3 or 4 times. That's it. It's not like I'm using this magic paint. Because what's happening is the paint, look, it looks really bright now because the paint's wet. But then it dries, and what it does is it absorbs the yellow and the green that's underneath. So if you just go over it once or twice, you can make colours look really, really bright. It's a little trick. And all it is, as I say, it's not being really skilled in anything. It's just having willpower to go over it once or twice. So look, just going over it, much more yellowy now. But it's always the same principle. Look, my little weird circles. They look like the heads of like Q-tips, like little cotton buds. But can you see it's starting to work? Let's zoom out. Oi, look at this. It's starting to work. So can you see at the bottom like how scruffy it looks compared to the top? So as I say, it's not hard. It just takes patience. Just think of the old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. So everything takes practice. And if you want to do anything properly, don't beat yourself up if you don't nail anything first time. It's totally natural. I think if you were learning a language, you wouldn't be like fluent in a day, would you? So anything like painting, any skill, cooking, whatever it is, sport, you've got to just keep going. And it's like a plane or something taking off. It takes a lot of effort and hard work. And then one day it will just take off like this bird and you'll be skybound. It's really, really easy. But you've got to keep going till you get to that point. And that's the whole point. So there we go. Look, so I'm just using this sort of medium colour. Sort of join medium bits between the light and the dark. So my transitions are all nice. So as I say, the background probably takes the most time. But it's looking really cool. So we've got this light effect here and it's getting less scruffy because we're working on it. Still a bit scruffy around here, but we can neaten it all up. Kind of want it a little bit darker, but let's do some work here. Let's get a really thin brush and let's get some dark green. Let's get a bit of water. So I'm just mixing some sap green and some normal green just to make sort of a darky bluey green. And the great thing about using a really thin brush, look, you can do grass. So by using a darker colour, I can use this brush and I can sort of just create the illusion of grass. So again, look, it's going to look really scruffy, but we're just trying to imply sort of texture again, a bit like we did with the hedge. So all we're doing, we're using that brush. As I say, having the right equipment really helps. Just having a really thin brush, look, you can scrape it back and forth and you can create sort of like some divots, just to look like faraway grass. As I say, don't worry if it's scruffy, we can neaten it all up later. We just want to kind of create the effect, see where everything is. So let's get my palette. And let's get some pink, and let's block in our kind of orchid. Now I'm going to make 3 piles of pink. So we're going to have a warm, a medium, and a cool again. So we're going to get some purple and put it at the bottom. So remember, cool colours are things like blues and purples. So we're going to use pink and purple at the bottom. I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to get some white, and we're going to have a warm, sort of bright pastel pink. That could be our highlight colour. And then we've got our normal rose pink in the middle as our kind of middle colour. So what I'm doing, look, I'm using the really light white and pink at the top. If you think the sunlight is going to be coming down from the left hand side, so these petals will be getting a bit bleached in the sunlight. So I'm just using this nice light pink. Really easy. Look, I'm just blocking her in. That looks really pretty. So let's put some in. Let's say if you go over it and it's a bit rough, we can always put some background in later and use a fine brush. Let's get our middle pink, which is just normal pink. And look, we can start putting in some shadows. You can even sort of create patterns on the petals, because you get some flowers that have really funky patterns, like psychedelic patterns. So you could always do that. If you have a reference photo, you could always find some. Or even if there's a different kind of flower, like a rose or something, you could always include in your version. So there we go. So we've got these bits that are getting a bit less sun. And then let's colour this one so it looks like it's poking in. And then because it's right at the bottom, I'm going to use my purpley pink. Look, just at the bottom, just to make a darker shade. And then let's do the light colour on this one. So this area will be getting the highlights. Let's get our middle pink and sort of colour in the rest. So there we go. So this one will be a bit darker because it's further away, it's getting a bit less sun. Same with this one. And then let's get some of our purpley pink and sort of do the underneath. So let's get the purpley pink and sort of do the underneath. And it will look like these bits are in the shade. Whoops. I think a cloud went past there. Just sort of like the light went off. You can see editing isn't my forte. I much prefer painting. There we go. So let's get some yellow. And let's kind of, let's do the middle of the daisy. They're kind of yellow, aren't they? Sort of a yellowy brown, so let's sort of put in the sort of pollen bit, and then let's sort of make this into kind of like a tulipy sort of thing. It's like a shape of a bluebell. I have no idea. Just kind of making it up. So there we go. And let's get some light yellow, which is just white and yellow. Just got it pre-mixed. So look, you can have darker shades or lighter shades. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to colour in, even though daisies are kind of white, because our sunlight is kind of yellow, we're just going to make this bit look a bit more yellow, just make it a little bit more rounder. And then the opposite, look, we're just going to get some cerulean blue and some white and make a cooler white. Tiny bit of pink, just a tiny bit. So we've got an off-white, kind of like a silvery colour, and then we're going to colour the other side. So again, always the same principle, one side's in the light, one side's in the shade. So let's make that petal a bit rounder. There we go, and we're just going to blend it with our fingers, just so the transitions are nice again. And there could be a bit of a daisy sort of coming up. So let's get some of this cerulean blue and white and pink. And let's put in some daisies that are in the grass. So what I'm doing, look, I've got a little brush, and all I'm doing, look, I'm just doing little smudgies, and these are just going to imply the heads of flowers, just off in the distance. I don't really want to create any detail, I just want to sort of give the impression that these are sort of flowers. So I'm just trying to do them randomly. I'm going to have different size ones, some big, some small. So these are just the heads of flowers off into the distance. So as I say, try to do them all different heights and different sizes, and then it will look more realistic. Don't want them all in a straight line, all the same size. It will look a bit weird and robotic. And then look, all I'm doing is I'm just getting some pink, and then I'm just doing the same thing. So some pink, look, just says two of the same flowers. They could be wildflowers in a meadow. So it's just to highlight that. There we go. Let's have some more at the bottom here. Going a bit crazy. Let's put loads. Why not? Let's have some bright ones here. Look funky. Let's have some bright pink ones. Let's have one in the gap here. There we go. Kind of looks groovy. And then let's get some ultramarine blue and mix it into our green. So get some sap green and some ultramarine blue, some normal green. Can't just make it all a nice sort of dark green. Looks like it sort of, let's add a little bit of that grey. And then just going back to my really thin brush, and I'm just now putting in some darker sort of shades. So these sort of the gaps in between the grass, we get a bit of shade. So look, just using a really thin brush, look, just creating these little lines just to imply sort of shadow in between grass. And then you could do the opposite. Look, you can go really dark as you come down. So you can add some black to your green. But look, see the black, it really dominates the colour. So look. So you'll be really careful it doesn't overwhelm it. So you only need a tiny, tiny bit. And then just down here, look, you could use a bit of a chunkier brush. Just imply just some shadow. And you can do the opposite. Look, you can get a really fine brush and you can get a really bright green, and then you can do highlights. So look, you can just have really fine sort of streaks of grass. It's up to you how detailed you want to go. Like, I was just sort of doing this to sort of teach you the techniques. But I think if you go really detailed, like I was going really crazy for a bit, and I think I overworked it. I think it would take, if you have too much going on, look, if I have every blade of grass, it kind of takes away from my hummingbird, which I kind of don't want. So sometimes less is more, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to show you how to do it, but you don't have to do it if you don't want to. But it's a really good thing, and as I say, having the right brushes really, really helps. And then all I'm going to do, I'm just going to put some yellow just here. And again, it just looks like the sunlight coming down onto that patch. And again, because it's just off center to my hummingbird, it gets you to look towards that area. So I'm just adding some yellow and pink. And then look, I'm just going to put some in right on the hedge line. So it looks like they're just coming over, again, to make it look more realistic. So let's get some sap green and blue. So same combination, look, sap green, blue. Tiny bit of black, and then let's block in our leaves. So if you think in the foreground, these sort of plants are going to be getting quite a lot of shade because they're quite away from the sun. So we're going to make the leaves quite dark and their stems. And what it should do as well, it should sort of stand out a little bit from the background. So just having a darker shade, we can get it to stand out a little bit. And I'm just going to add a little bit of blue to my green, just to make it a little bit darker. So some areas, look, I just want a little bit darker. So I'm just run out of paint, so I'm just going to add a little bit of blue. So if you see the colour change there, look, it's just slightly darker. So blues, so keep repeating. Really, really good to make areas darker and cooler. So I'm just going to use it on the underside of this leaf. Down here. Here we go. Just on this bit of the leaf. And let's just block this one in. So don't worry if it looks a bit flat. Lots of acrylic paintings do. Unlike oil paintings, they're quite hard to make things look 3D when you first block things in. So what we're going to do is just put all the base colours on it, and then we'll start putting the highlights and the shadows on to make it look 3D. So let's just do these two little petals coming off this daisy. And as I say, like, you can go your own speed. So if there's any bits of white canvas that you can see underneath that you've missed, just take your time, just go over them. A lot of having a nice painting is just refining stuff, just taking an extra 10 minutes, just going over your work and just trying to get it more professional, or doing this, just going over the same paint twice to get it more vibrant or to look less scruffy. If you've got things like brush marks, scratches on the canvas. Okay, so now that's nice and dry, all I'm going to do is get my white and pink, and I'm just going to get a small brush and I'm just going to highlight this flower. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just going around the edges. So just as I was saying previously, it's kind of hard to get sort of a 3D effect on acrylics because they dry quite flat. They haven't got a sheen like oil paints do. So what you can do is you can use colours to trick the eye and make them look more 3D and sort of come away. So by using a darker background, because we've got that darker green, and having a brighter, warmer colour in the highlight, look, we can go around these petals and we can kind of make it stand out now from the background. So just putting this white and pink, let's make this one a little bit more rounded. There we go. And let's do the same on this one. We can kind of get it to stand out a bit more from the background, look less flat. It's a little trick. Kind of in real life this wouldn't really be that much of the case, but as I say, we kind of want to change it for our painting to suit us. So let's do this one. There we go. That kind of stands out. Nice and easy. So that looks better, doesn't it? So let's get some yellow and lime green. So yellow and lime green. So you can basically use the colours to just go over them. So just like we did with the orchid, the flower, look, we can go over with a brighter colour. We can add vibrancy to our work. So as I say, with acrylic paints, it is just a bit repetitive, but by having the discipline to do it, as I keep saying to you, and just the willpower to do it, you can make your work look really, really professional. So acrylics are great for beginners because they dry so quick. They're really, really easy. If you find your paints dry really, really quick, you can always use a spray, like a water spray that you use for plants to keep your palette wet so your paints don't dry out. But they're really forgiving. So unlike oils where you have to wait for hours for them to dry and all the colours mix together, the good thing about acrylics, you can literally just dry them and go over them. But because everything has a yin to the yang, as I keep saying, they are a bit flat when they dry and they can lose some of their colour. So unfortunately, look, you do have to go over them. But the good thing is, like with your work, you can take steps back. Look how vibrant that looks now. And you can rework areas. So what I find for me is I can have a break, and then I can sort of look at areas that I need to refine and come back to them, and I can rework areas just to how I like them. So now I'm bringing these lights down, and I'm just using a little bit more green as I come towards the bird. So it's got less yellow and more of that lime green. It's got still a tiny bit of yellow just to give it that highlight so it stands away from the background. But that is looking much better. So as I say, just take your time. And these brushes, as I say, because the brush it's got a round head, it's not got a flat head, it's really, really soft. So it's really, really easy to push really gently, look, and let the chalky residue of the paint. I'm not really using any water. That's a trick. Because if you use water on your brush, like my brush is moist, but it's not like soaking wet. So don't dip your paint in water. Just dip your paint in water right at the beginning. Dry it a little bit so the bristles are a little bit moist but not very much, and then just dip it in your paint and let the paint run off and run out, and that's when you've got that little chalky residue. Look, and the same here. Look, I've just got some white and yellow. I'm just making everything look more vibrant, professional. See, the difference between like really, really good painters on here, when you watch on YouTube, you get people who do every blade of grass and every like hair on the bird and everything like that. All it is they're willing to do things that other people aren't, and I'm not like that. I'm kind of in between, where I do quite a lot of detail but not too much. I kind of think less is more sometimes, but it depends how photorealistic you want to go. So as I say, you can go really realistic and spend 3 weeks on the painting if you want to, but I kind of did this in a few hours. And sometimes, as I say, it gets a bit tedious and it gets a bit like grimes on you, so it's best to have a break. So look, all I'm doing is I'm getting a small brush and some white. I was finding at this stage, even though the painting was dry, I was kind of losing the battle. Don't know about you guys, but with painting, it should be really enjoyable and it should be fun. And one of the reasons I paint is I like to kind of lose myself and lose track of time because I'm really enjoying it. It's kind of like what you get this description of the flow state, where you lose all sense of yourself and you just in the moment and you just relax and all your nervous system relaxes and you just really enjoy it. And when I was getting to this point, I've been going for probably about 2 and a bit hours, maybe 3, because of planning the painting in my head, getting all my equipment out, all the filming gear, setting it up and doing all this. And I was kind of wilting. I was getting really, really tired, almost like if you'd done an exam for 3 hours straight, you kind of lose the will to live. So basically I was struggling a little bit, and I notice when I struggle, that's normally when I start to make mistakes. So think of like if you went to a gym or something like that, you can't work out for 3 hours straight. You'll start to absolutely hyperventilate and die. So there comes a point where you've got to kind of have a bit of a break. So I took a day off, as in I stopped for the day, packed everything away and came back to it. So I'm just going to get some lime green and I'm just going to go round my white highlight. So all I used is pure white and I'm just going around it. But as you can see now, look, things like I'm forgetting to dip my brush in water. I'm kind of struggling, like I'm starting to wilt. But as I say, I like to leave all these things in the video because I'm trying to show people everyone's human. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has bad days. Don't beat yourself up. I think a lot of things in this world at the moment, everyone compares themselves because of social media and they're really unrealistic. And they don't give them some time and they don't give themselves patience because everything is click of a button, like Amazon, and everyone gets what they want straight away. And life just isn't like that. So I'm just getting some lime green. I'm just shading that tip of that leaf, because if you think the light is coming again down from that corner, so it's always the same principle. Think where the light is coming down. So this one, even though it's kind of been in shade from the petals above, we're just going to kind of colour in. And look, you can even do some little lines to have sort of like the veins of the leaf, you know, you get the sort of stems and you get sort of like the life force, the veins coming through the leaf. But I'm kind of half-arsing it, if you see what I mean. At this point, I'm getting tired. Don't be thinking like that watching the tutorial, so you must stay with it. You must subscribe. I'm joking. But, so let's get some blue and green. So sap green and our ultramarine blue recipe that we've been using. And as I say, look, you can use darks. So you can use darks, but look, I keep forgetting to dip my brush in the water. I'm just struggling. Because the thing with painting, like another thing is sometimes with art, you don't go A, B, C, D. You don't go all in a row to do things. Like even with this painting, when I had finished it, that night when I went to bed, even in my head, I was noticing things that are bothering me. So all I've done here, I've got some yellow. As I say, I was struggling. So I'm just going to show you what I actually did because I forgot to put my camera on, which is shocking. All I did was get some yellow and I just outlined this orchid. And I'm trying to create like a heat effect to make it look like it's getting heat from the sun. But as I said, I was kind of wilting and I kind of forgot to put the camera on, so my bad. Please, if you want, tell me off in the comments. But as I say, human nature. So just again, think where the light was coming. So the light would be coming down onto these leaves and petals. So I'm just using a fine brush and I'm just gone round the yellow. So if you imagine it's yellow, then into lime green. And then if you want, look, you could put the white back over the top. So on the very top of the flower, it's just white, then yellow, because those bits are getting the most illuminated from the sun. So they're getting the most bleached. And then on the leaves, because the leaves are green, I've done them white, lime green, and then into a darker green. But the thing is, as I keep saying to you, look, even though I'm using fresh, pure out the tube white paint, it still looks quite bright. But when it dries, unfortunately, it's going to, the green that's underneath is going to seep into it. And it's going to look a bit flat. So let's get some of our pink and purple and let's start putting some shade in. So if we've got the lights, we've got to have the darks. Can't have ups without downs. So we're going to put the mixture between our hot, bright highlights, like this white and pink, and our cool, dark shadows. So let's get some purple and let's get some ultramarine blue. Create sort of a grey. This warm grey, as I say, is just black, orange and white. Black, orange and white to make warm grey. So look, black if you want to darken stuff, white if you want to obviously lighten it up. So I'm just going to use a darker shade of this colour. It's kind of like a dark grey. And I'm just going to put the shadows underneath sort of this bit of the plant. Just trying to think which areas are going to get shade. So the underneath of these petals will kind of be in the shade. Because I didn't have a reference photo, a lot of these paintings I do just from my imagination. As I say, I was kind of struggling because I was trying to think how everything works, how to design everything. But by now I was just getting tired. So let's put some here on the shade here. So as I say earlier, if you would like to like and subscribe, that would be really, really good. The channel is doing fantastic. There's over 150 something tutorials now. Let us know as well if you prefer these longer videos, which are kind of real time, so you can learn all the actual real techniques, or if you prefer the quicker versions, because everyone is different, like the time-lapse versions, because we can always do both. But I think these versions tend to be more popular because they actually show you what to do. So look, all I'm doing is just now it's all dry, I'm just using some bright lime green, and you can even put a bit of yellow into it and kind of make it look like some of the grass is getting some highlights from the sun. So these are all the sort of tips of grass. I've got my really thin brush, which is like a really, really sharp pencil. And I'm just refining everything now. So just like we did on the hedge, just spending 5 minutes just neatening things up, trying to make all my transitions look pretty. So let's get some brown, some raw umber, and some yellow, and let's just put in some of the details on this daisy to make it like sort of middle look more texturized, and we can put some little detail on our tulip sort of thing, little trumpet thing here. There we go. And what we could do, we can just use it as a little outline with our sharp brush, just to give it a little bit of definition. There we go. So I'm just using that fine brush just to put in really just tiny divots in the petals, and I'm going to get some of my warm grey, and I'm just going to add some shade. I don't want it too harsh, I don't want to use black or anything, just want to use this sort of pastel grey. And then all I'm doing, I'm just going around the highlights again. So look, now it's dry, look, just getting some nice glossy white. And as you can see in the corner there, I was using my phone to try to get some upright footage. If any of you would like me to put any videos on how to get your art, how to film it, or how to take photos or anything like that, we could do videos on that, because that's a thing I get asked a lot. So look, all I'm doing is I'm just making some yellow and lime green, and the same thing, look, I'm just going around the outlines. So look, we're just trying to make them really, really bright, vibrant. Look, just going around them, we can make them look really electric. So look, we're trying to get all these sort of really, really bright, lovely outlines, just so they look less scruffy. But yeah, we could do videos on photography, we could do videos on what videos and things do well. I've noticed where I took a year off, the algorithm kind of hated me when I came back, because it's like anything in life. If you took a year off something, imagine you didn't go for a run for a year, and then you tried to go for a run, you probably find it quite difficult because you're a bit unfit. So on here, same thing, consistency pays off. So if you find just by doing something over and over again, it's like painting, like anything, you'll find you'll get better at it, and the more you do it, the more you'll learn from your mistakes, and you can sort of start performing better, and you'll notice through good feedback, you'll notice things that you're doing badly and things that you're doing really well, and you can refine it, just like painting. So look, all these life lessons. So, but the good thing is there's loads of tricks that people don't do. So you can, just like me, I'm going to tell you a little trick now. You can see a white background. Let's get some purple and grey. You can see a white background, can't you, in the filming? That's just a white foam board. Ooh! But by having a white foam board behind my painting, and when I'm taking photos of it, it makes it look clean and it makes it look much more professional. And these white foam boards cost a whopping £1. So I'm not a big spender. I haven't got a giant photography lab set up behind you. It's not like a photo shoot. It's just a cheap white foam board. So little things like that, if someone told you, it's kind of like a magician. It kind of takes away the magic. But all these little things help. And I'm all about giving all my secrets away, because I think, as I keep saying to you, not enough people do. Not enough people help each other and share things. So that's what we're all about. So look, all I'm doing is putting some grey now, and just put some shade on this area. Still looking pretty flat, but we'll make it darker later. We just kind of want to work on the shading. So just like everything, we're just trying to build all the sort of functions, and then we can put highlights and really dark shade over the top. So I've just got some yellow, kind of mixing in with the peach, and then we can just get some of that white and yellow. We just make this area a little bit brighter. Just bring it out a bit more. Look. So as I say, by just taking your time and just going over things. Sometimes the paint's wet and it all mixes. And as I say, you've got to force yourself to dry it or take a break. So down here it's going to be slightly darker, so I'm just using a little bit more yellow. So I want the whitey yellow to be where the light's hitting it, and I want the darker yellow as it's just getting sort of glowing in that sort of sunlight. And then a little bit of lime green, just because this corner is going to be even darker. Still getting a little bit of sun, but not as much. There we go, so that's looking fantastic. So we've got all these blades of grass, we've got the light coming, we've got these flowers sticking out, we're going to do our bird in a minute, we've got our hedge. Everything's kind of looking good. This is kind of where I had to break for the day, because things like the grass, I think I'd overworked it. I think it looks a bit too much. So now, this is the morning after. That sounds a bit rude, but I was feeling a lot better and a lot more refreshed. I had a good night's sleep. So what I'm going to do, look, I'm going to get some green and my ultramarine blue. So I'm going to get some green, ultramarine blue. I'm going to mix a really dark green. Let's put some grey into it. So that warm grey, as I say, is black, orange and white. So we've got some green, ultramarine blue and grey. I've got my round brush. Tiny bit of purple. I'm trying to make it not too harsh. So remember I said to you blacks are really, really harsh. So by putting purples and greys in, we can just take a bit of the harshness out of it. We've got plenty of green. And what we're going to do, now I've refreshed, basically all night things were bugging me about the painting. I think I'd overworked the grass, and I hadn't put enough shadow at the bottom. So all I'm doing with a dry brush and a dry canvas, I'm trying to make a kind of an area here which more shades, and what it should do is make a clear defining line between the start of the grass and the back of the hedge. So look, we've got the yin to the yang, we've got the light at the top and we've got the dark at the bottom. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use that shadow. Nearer the sun, I'm going to put more grey into it. So look, this warm grey is black. Oh, I haven't got any orange on my palette, so I will show you. Let's get some orange. If I just put some in my mix, and I will show you how to make it. Look, so this is what I was saying to you. I don't necessarily want you to buy all these paints if you haven't got them. Look, so look, you can make it look orange to brighten something up. And then if you put a tiny bit of black in it, it will go grey and white. So it's a weird mix, orange, grey and white. Orange, black and white. And all I'm doing, I'm putting a little bit more white in it. Look, and it will turn it more grey. If I put more blue in it, it goes a darker shade of grey. So orange to warm it up, blue to cool it back down. And look, by putting green in it, we can make this dark green. But it's still quite pastel. It's not as harsh because it's got less black in it. And if you imagine this area of the sun is a little bit lighter. So still we're going to get into some shades because it's got some of that orange in it. It's still a little bit warmer. And by doing this shadow, not only can it set my bird, it will create a nice outline around my bird to make my bird stick out when we paint her back in. And I'm just mixing this area to join the transitions. But also, look, if I go around my flower, I can bring that flower out a bit. Because I think the flower's a bit too flat. So by putting this shadow around it, I can bring it out. So again, it's just a little trick. It's a little trick here. And I think here I overworked it. I've done too much detail. So by putting a bit of shadow at the bottom, so all I'm doing, I'm using the exact same colour to just colour over the top. And what it should do, I've got hardly any paint on my brush. So look, if I push down really hard, look, if I push down really hard, loads comes off, look, on my hand. But if you don't push down hard, you're just really just touching the canvas really, really slightly, a chalky residue will come out and you can just paint over the top. So all my detail for my grass is kind of getting covered up. But what I'm doing, if you think of by darkening your corners and by darkening the bottom of the painting, I'm trying to get you to look towards the middle. So what I'm doing, I'm deliberately darkening the corners. All these areas wouldn't be getting much sunlight because they're furthest away from the sun anyway. By darkening up the corners and darkening up this side, I can get you to look towards the bird. And then let's just get a harsher version. So we're going to add some black and some blue and some brown. So black, blue and brown. A little bit of grey, just take the harshness out of it. Some green. If you haven't got grey, you can just add a little bit of white. And all I'm going to do now, look, where we've got those lovely highlights, I'm feeling refreshed. I've got now my brush, I'm dipping it in water. We're all good. All I'm going to do now is go around the bottom of all the leaves. So if you imagine all the tops of all the leaves have got these lovely bright highlights. Well, now I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to go around the bottom with this harsh dark green. And I'm going to give them all shadow. And we're going to try bringing it out to make it look more 3D. And now when we've got our darkened line behind it with the hedge line, we've got these harsh shadows. What it should do is start to make everything look 3D. Because I actually did this painting for my daughter. I did a painting, a very, very similar one. And I'd done it about 6 months ago, I think. And when I was looking at it, the one I'd done originally had all these nice traits to it. And I think, as I say, you just forget certain things. And I had done things like these harsh dark bits and the hedge line and things like that. And I think I'd just forgotten. And I think where I was struggling yesterday, I'd just forgotten where I was in it. So just having a good night's sleep and letting your brain relax and then coming back to something. A lot of the time your brain is still on and it works out things while you're asleep. And then you come back and you go, ooh, you have a shower or something, this great idea pops to you. It's really crazy. I used to say Einstein used to go swimming and he would have his best ideas for inventions and theories when he was swimming, because guess what? He was relaxed. So by doing something completely different, if you ever have something like a test or thinking, go and watch a movie or go and relax and do something, paint, watch one of my tutorials. And what's it called? Do something completely different, and normally the idea will come to you as your subconscious will bring it up to your conscious mind, and you can work something out. So look, all we're doing, we're putting these harsh outlines. Use your thin brush, it's so much easier. So take your time, no rush. If you have to do it once it dries, that's it. So just adding some shade, just down here, just making this corner a little bit darker. Just giving it a really sharp edge, just a little bit more definition. You can even add some harsh shadows on the petals. There we go. And then I'm just getting some yellow and orange. I'm just going to put some darker highlights here. So again, that glow is just a bit darker. And then I'm just getting some orange and brown to create a burnt sienna colour. So orange and brown. And I'm just putting some pollen and some harshness on this daisy. Again, just to bring it out. Let's put some harsh outlines on this tulip. And if I zoom back out, it's starting to take effect. So let's get some white Let's get some pink. Let's make a hot pink. Let's make a really nice sort of hot, warm pink. So lots of white, lots of pink to make a nice pastel colour. Now we've got our orange. Let's add some orange. And what it should do, it should turn the pink and a little bit of yellow into a peach colour. So we're going to make a very hot pink. So look at that. That looks fantastic. Really pastel, really bright. A little bit of white, just tame it down a bit. And I think what we should do is to bring our sort of plants to life. We should just make them a bit warmer in the sun. So look, let's just make these areas a bit warmer. Look at that, that was fantastic. So as I say, having a bit of a break just recharges the batteries. Look at this. Just all these little ideas are coming to me now. Makes me feel a lot better. So don't fight the flow, go with it. So you don't have to do all these things in one go. You can do it in stages. So I'm just warming up areas where the sunlight's going to be hitting it. That looks so much better. And let's just blend it so we haven't got the harsh transitions. I want to make everything look natural and smooth. So just by blending it, look, just taking my time. That's so much nicer. And now if we put our really bright white back on, look at this, starting to all take effect. So we got there in the end. As I say, just perseverance. It's like anything. Just push through. Just putting these highlights on. Everything's starting to take shape. Just look less scruffy. So just making everything look nicer. So I'm kind of happy with this. Let's just put a really nice highlight here. So now we've got the darks and the lights complementing each other, working together. Everything's looking groovy. Just put some highlights here on the pollen. Just here on the tip of the leaves. And let's paint our bird in. Yay! So we did it. So the background, as I say, takes the longest. The bird is actually really easy. So the next half an hour, we're going to do the bird all in one. So all I'm doing, I'm using my royal blue, which was cerulean blue and cobalt blue, to put back my outline. Just making them a bit more chunky. So let's put our bird back in. So I'm just making my outline less scruffy. So I know exactly where I'm going to paint. Let's just do his wings. Now my bird is kind of a weird bird. It's kind of was based on a hummingbird, but I kind of like kingfishers. So I kind of coloured it the colour of a kingfisher, even though it's not a kingfisher. I just really like sort of blues and turquoises. So I have dried my work and we've got this lovely chunky outline now. And now we're going to paint our bird and make it look all these things together. All the recipe together and make it look super realistic. So this colour is cerulean blue, cobalt blue and white. So cerulean blue, cobalt blue and white. You can add a tiny bit of turquoise and you should get this colour. And all I'm going to do for the light is going to hit his head. I'm using lots of white at the top of his head to get sort of a nice sort of baby blue. So I don't know if you get many blue hummingbirds, but in my world you do, because I like blue. So I've kind of made my one a new species. I don't know if this species exists. That'd be kind of cool if it did. And yeah, I kind of did it sort of like a kingfisher colours. But I don't know if you do get birds like this. It could be a lovebird, I guess. Just make it up. So all I'm doing, I'm using this light baby blue on the top of his head and sort of the outer left bits of the wing because they're going to be getting the sunlight. But I also think by having a nice sort of bright blue against the sort of yellow and green dominant backgrounds, it sort of again stands out. So by having different colours, we can make the background and the foreground look completely different. Because I think if we'd done it green or brown even, or yellow, it would just kind of get lost into the background. So by making her lovely in blue, we can kind of do that. Now I'm using a darker shade of turquoise. So I've got a darker shade of turquoise. So you can add a little bit of blue to your turquoise and you should get a darker shade. I am extremely lazy. I buy a lot of my paints pre-mixed. I use a fantastic brand called PBO Deco Creme, which is a really, really good brand of acrylics. You can get them in America, but I think they're very expensive. But in the UK, they're not. They're made by a European company called PBO, and they're about £6 a tube, and a tube should last you months, so they're very reasonable. And what's great about them is they have lots of colours like this one that are already pre-mixed. Obviously I mix a lot of my own colours and shades, but by having all these mixed colours, they are fantastic. I do have a link in the description box below for things like Amazon, where you can get the brand. So look, it's just a darker shade of turquoise. You can make it, as I say, because you can add blue to turquoise. So if you haven't got these paints, do not fret at home. You don't have to buy them. I'm not plugging for you to buy things. But all they are is turquoise with a little bit more blue. So we're just getting darker as we move towards the right. And we're just blocking our shade in. But I have put links in the description box below to Amazon. So if you want to find them, you can click the link and you can buy them. They do, again, sell them in Hobbycraft. Shout out Hobbycraft. Sponsor my videos. I'm joking. So look, we've got our our royal blue, which was cobalt blue and cerulean blue mixed together. And again, look, it's just a darker shade. So as I say, if you're mixing the colours at home, you just want more turquoise and white to create a baby blue on the left-hand side, a sort of middle colour in the middle, and a darker shade of blue as you move towards the right. So there we go. So same principle, we're going to block the bird in first, and then we're going to work on all the detail, all the highlights and the shadows afterwards. Okay, so let's get more of that colour, and let's just outline her again. And we can put in some feathers. So now we've got the lights on, we can use the darker colours to just put some grooves in. So if I zoom in for you, and we can put some feathers. So all I'm doing, look, it's kind of like hair. All I'm doing, look, I'm just creating lines, just straight lines with a darker colour. So by putting the lighter colour on first, I can use the darker colour to create the illusion of hair or feathers, just texture. And then as we move to the right hand side, that colour is kind of going to get lost in the darker shade. We can kind of blend it in, there we go. So we need a darker version. So let's get some black. Let's get some ultramarine blue, which is a darker blue. Again, if you haven't got that at home, just use black and blue. You just want to make a sort of like, it's called Prussian blue or Prussian blue, I don't know how you pronounce it. I have a lot of the pronunciation police that come on my comments and tell me off for not pronouncing things correctly, which I always often found funny, how a person can get really offended by someone not pronouncing something. I always think that's hilarious. I often think it's hilarious as well. People have so much time to do these things. I've never watched a video and let something get to me so much that I had to comment. Like, I do the opposite normally. I normally like tell people how well they're doing and try to big them up. But again, I think some people have way too much time. I often find that funny. What I find funny as well is a lot of people don't realise they're having arguments with bots nowadays. They're having arguments with fake people, fake profiles, and they spend all their time ranting at that someone set up a computer somewhere in a workshop, which I often find funny. So there we go, look, we're going to get dark on our wings, and we're just going to blend it, just create a bit of shadow. And again, by using this harsh dark blue, we can bring that bird away, and because we've got the softer colours, they're complementing in our hedge, it pushes it back. So again, think of yin and yang. We're using both darks and lights to complement each other, so they're working together. So look, if it wasn't for this really nice flat background with less harshness, now we're putting the harshnesses, it's bringing our bird forward and making it look more realistic. So again, I'm just doing some lines to create feathers. So there we go. So it's weird how the bird is probably the easiest bit of the painting. I actually got into landscape paintings because I was always really, really good at painting and drawing anything. But I used to find the landscapes, the backgrounds, terrible. So say I did this bird, I'd do a hyper-realistic bird, and then I'd just paint the background blue or orange or something because I didn't know how to do them. And my worst feature was landscapes. So I actually taught myself how to do landscapes. And then I liked them so much, I ended up being a landscape artist. So who would have known? But I think if you combine the two, if you're good at landscapes, which I've tried to be teaching you for the last year or so, let's get some dark blue again. So we're mixing some of our royal blue, which is cerulean blue and cobalt blue, with ultramarine blue to make a dark shade. Again, you can add a bit of purple if you haven't got that colour. We just want a darker, cooler shade of blue. Yeah, but by combining the two aspects, if you're good at drawing and painting and you're good at the backgrounds, you can make things look hyper realistic and combine the two. And now that from seeing all your work on our Instagram page, where you send me your versions of the landscape tutorials, I can see how fantastic everyone is doing. Really proud of everyone, how well they're doing. Like some of the work that people show me is as good as mine. I'm really, really chuffed that people are taking these lessons and running with them and doing so fantastic. We've got a Hall of Fame section on my Instagram. If you want to click on it, you can see other people's work, and some of them are absolutely fantastic. So now that you're all doing so well, everyone's been crying out to put things in the tutorials like animals and characters and figures and things like that. We're going to start combining the two. We'll still do landscapes, of course, but we're going to start doing more detailed work, more of these longer tutorials. So what I'm doing now, look, I'm putting some detail around his head, giving him kind of like a funky, sort of like feathered area around his face and his eye. So there's little markings he has. So it's all starting to take shape. So we're just using like a medium shade of blue here. And again, I'm just using my really thin brush to do the impression of sort of hairs and fuzz. But as I say, take your time, don't rush. You don't have to do every single detail. And if you want at home, get a picture of a hummingbird or get a picture of a kingfisher with other colours. And you can kind of... what's it called? Combine the two. If you do want to work from a photo to give yourself a bit of added realism and detail, if you are that way inclined. So I'm just going to create a harsh outline here. Under his belly, he's got a little bit of a belly, as we all. So let's make it a little bit more shady. And then let's get our harsher blue that we just used. And let's just make some of these areas a little bit darker. So around his eyes, normally birds have like little black eyes. So we're going to add a little bit of shade. If you think he's kind of got his back to the sun, so this area here would be quite dark. So we're just making it a little bit harsher. Make it a little more 3D. Go. But it does really, really help having such a thin brush. Again, this is like $1 brush, it's not expensive. But it's just the actual texture of the brush. Having one with really thin, like needle-like bristles So it's like a really sharp point. So think of something like a needle. You don't get much paint on it, but at the same point, look, I have to dip it in my paint quite a lot. But look, it's really, really easy. It's like having a really sharp pencil. It makes it so much easier to do fine, straight lines. So rather than using a big, chunky brush that splits apart and you get all dollops everywhere, by just having the right tools really makes your life a lot easier. So there we go. Let's get some black, and then let's just do a little circle for his eye. Ooh, he looks kind of mean now. Looks like a shark or something with that big black eye. And let's just outline really, really the darkest bits here on his wing. Yeah, it kind of looks too mean now. Doesn't look very nice. We'll have to put a little highlight on it in a minute. But trust the process. Just wait, just watch. So we're just using a little bit black. Does make it look a little bit cartoony when we're this zoomed in, but I promise you when we zoom out it will complement it. So let's dip some water in, just get a little bit more on my brush. There we go. Just here. Excuse the focus, I think my hand is so close to the camera. And let's paint his beak in. Now hummingbirds tend to have really thin beaks, and I kind of went a bit gung-ho here, and I put way too much paint on my brush in a minute, and I kind of made his beak a bit fat. I kind of made it fat. But don't fret, as I keep saying to you, there's nothing we can't fix. So when I was kind of smudging it, I was a bit lazy. I should have dipped my brush in water and just taken my time. But I don't take my own advice. And I kind of made him have a giant fat beak. So it's a bit too chunky. It's meant to be more sharp and long. But as I say, we can block it in and then we can fix it. So don't worry. Ooh, look at this. Starting to look realistic. So we got our chunky beak bird. And we've got our shadows and everything on it. As I say, we can fix anything, don't worry. But it's starting to all come 3D. Now we've got everything zoomed out. I have dried my work with a hairdryer. So I'm just stating that to you because the reason I have dried my work with a hairdryer is because now we're going to use warm highlights. And I don't want them mixing with the blues. So please use a hairdryer or let your work dry for 20 minutes and then do this stage, because you don't want blue and this colour, which was our peach colour that we used on our petals. All it is orange, a tiny bit of pink and a bit of yellow. So orange, yellow and pink to get peach. And then we're just going to get some yellow and white and we're going to add it to the mix and make a lighter shade. And all we're going to do is just do lighter versions on the bottom part where it's getting the more sunlight. So we're using darker, more peach colour on the right hand side and adding yellow and white to have a lighter shade. But as I say, by drying your painting, it's so much easier to not get horrible, gooey, dull colours if it mixes, because yellow on orangey colours with green will, with blue will make green and browns. So you don't want, we want it really nice and vibrant and colourful. We don't want sort of mucky greens and browns on our bird. So look, the lighter colour on the bit of his belly, the harsher colour towards his wings. So look, you can even go over it, make it more highlighted. We can even add some like fur to make him look all chunky and fluffy. So I'm just putting some highlights here. I'll zoom back in for you in a minute. I'm just trying to show you sort of the rough blocking in. So there we go, he looks all pretty, or she. So it looks really, really nice. And while we've got the colour, why don't we use it to put some highlights on the wing? It can be these little markings. So while we've got this sort of lighter version of the peach, why don't we just use it? It looks a bit scruffy, but we're just blocking her in. We'll refine her in a minute. But as I say, this kind of hummingbird painting / kingfisher. We can do some more. So think of ideas. If anything, I kind of want to do a safari one. We could do a lion. We could do a giraffe or something like that. So think of any ideas for the tutorials. Right, I'm just going to put a tiny bit of brown into the mix, just to make it a little bit darker. Look, it's got a tiny bit of brown. So it's like a harsh, warm, tan sort of colour. And all I'm going to do now, I'm zoomed in for you. I'm using my thin brush. And I'm just going to imply some texture for some hair. So this could be his fluffy belly. So again, I'm not going to go super detailed, but I just want to put the implication of some detail. So by putting the lights on first, we can use a harsher colour, just like we did with the feathers on the blue. We can use this hard colour, sort of nice darker shade, to create the illusion of fluff and bristles on his hair. So there we go. So just shading his underbelly. And then look, we could do the same with a highlight colour. So we can get some yellow and white, and we can come down here on his belly. So just like we did with the petals, just like we did like on the hedge, we can just use the opposite to put some highlights on. So I'm just using some of the white and yellow now, just on the heel, on the underbelly. Let's say I don't want to go too detailed. I just want to make it look nice and soft. Just coming down here. There we go. It's looking nice and realistic. And then while we've got this colour, why don't we just put some highlights here on his wing. So same principle, look, I'm just coming down with the brush, just trying to do some lines to create the illusion of feathers. And then let's get a clean brush, or just clean our brush, and then let's just get a brighter shade. So I've just got more white and a tiny bit of yellow, just a tiny bit. So predominantly white with just a dot of yellow. I'm just going to paint in his face a little bit better, just so it looks less scruffy. I'm just using an off-white because I want to use the white for my highlight. So I want it to be just slightly different colour. And I'm just going to get some of our grey that we mixed. Do you remember the grey, which was orange, black and lots of white? And I'm just going to put in some little feathers, just little lines, look, just off the outline. So again, you barely notice them. If you were standing away from the paint, you wouldn't see them. But if you come in close like we are now, you can have little hints of feathers. And then while we've got that grey, look, I'm just going to put a line in his beak, just to have a little bit of separation. That looks a little bit better. And we can get some of our green, look, and we can just neaten up his beak. Look, let's make it a little bit more thin. So as I say, that's the wonder of acrylic paints. They're really forgiving, they're perfect for intermediate and beginners. I know this is an advanced tutorial, it's a bit harder, but the principles are still the same. You can just dry your work, look, and paint over anything. So don't ever fret if you don't get the rage. I get the rage all the time. Don't give up, just stick with it, have a break. And now let's get some white and put a little dot on his eye so it's not as harsh and evil. Look at that, yay! And we're going to do this cool trick. So we're going to get our brush and we're going to have a steady hand, and we're going to take our time, and we're going to start putting highlights to make him look glowing like we did with our petals on our plants. So look at this. This is when he starts to come alive. So by putting bright white around our lovely baby blue, we can make him look like he's coming away from that hedge, make him look 3D and sparkling in the sunlight. So look at that. And as I say, the paint will look really, really bright at first. It will look great and you'll feel really good. And then you'll go away for half an hour and it will look quite rubbish because it will dry and suck up some of that green hedge colour. So don't worry, you can just put another layer over the top. So let's just get some more white. Another little trick is you can buy a paint that is called gloss paint for acrylics, which has more of a shiny sheen. Again, I think they're about £2 a tube, and they come in like these little sort of tubes that are what you would have sort of like nail polish in. They're very small, but they're called gloss acrylics. I'm using a little bit of gloss white here just to make this highlight look a little bit more sparkly, a little bit more bright. So that's a little trick that you didn't know. And then look, we're going to put some on his underbelly. So this bit is getting a little bit of the sunlight, and again it just creates a little bit of definition between him and the hedge. Let's put some on this feather. Oh, he's looking so cool. So it's amazing how your painting comes together all right at the end. So if you'd given up, you wouldn't have got this far. You were so close, and I think a lot of life is like that, where people don't realise how close they are to doing something great, and they give up just before they reach it. So a lot of people who do really, really well in life are just consistent. They're not anything special. They're just willing to put in work when people give up. So great way to be is just be a bit obsessive and just keep going, but not to take it too seriously and not to beat yourself up when you make a mistake. Brush yourself off and go again. So there we go. So using this really sharp, lovely bright white, let's put some on this wing because it's going to be getting a highlight. We can make this look lovely. Oh, it's so nice. So happy. Even me yesterday when I went to bed, I was getting a bit mad. I was like, oh, it's not coming out how I want it. Maybe the tutorial won't go as well. And you kind of doubt yourself. That's totally normal. But don't worry. Believe in yourself. Keep going. So there we go. Look, just going over it now with this white. You could, as I say, you could even use a tiny bit of oil paint just on these bits to bring out that white, to make it look really, really sharp if you would like to. And a good rule of thumb as well is if you dry your painting before you attempt these stages, so if you dried your work and heaven forbid you got a bit nervous and you made a mistake or something, if you have something like a pack of baby wipes next to you, and if you went a bit too chunky on the outline or you went over your bird by accident or something, your painting's nice and dry underneath, and you can always use the baby wipe just to wipe away the paint and go again. So never get to the point where you feel pressured or anything like that. Just relax. It's not that big a deal. It's not that important. And as I say, if you dry your work before you attempt something difficult, and then just have a pack of baby wipes next to you, if it does go wrong, you can just wipe it away. And it's like saving a game. You can just come back to where you just were. So what I'm doing, look, I'm just using that like little white, and I'm just putting some tiny highlights. And I'm just getting a lighter shade of turquoise, which is just turquoise and white. And I'm just going to put some highlights on the feathers here. So again, these areas are going to be getting lots of sunlight. So they're just going to be slightly lighter. So what I'm doing, I'm just putting some slight highlights, not too much. Let's put a little bit on his head. Now we've zoomed in, let's have some on his crown of his head. So they're just to imply some feathers. But I think sometimes it's a bit like the grass, sometimes you can overwork things, you can go a bit too far. So as I say, I don't want to have every single detail on him. So look, if you don't like something, if you find it a bit too much, you can always smudge it. And because he's a bit too light now, all I'm doing, look, I'm just getting a medium blue, just one that's not so light, and I'm just refining it. I'm just putting it, blending it back. So that's what I'm saying. You can always try things out Look, let's get some of the medium blue. Let's just put some shadows on. So if you find it's like a pendulum, if you go too far one way, you can always come back the other way. So look, just getting a little bit of that sort of darker blue. Just put some of the feathers back in. And then we've got the combination between the lights and the darks. There we go. So just putting in the last feathers. I think his wing, that pattern on his wing, I think we need to neaten up a little bit. So we'll do that just before we finish. So I'm just putting on odd feathers. So let's just get some darker blue, which was ultramarine blue, and a bit of black. And I've added a tiny bit of purple just to make it more grey. And I'm just going to shade in here and just go over slightly the black outline, just so the black outline is much thinner and not as cartoony and harsh. And again, just putting some areas where I think there's going to be shadow, just to make it look like it's in the shade. So look, just going around the painting, just making that black outline just slightly thinner by using that dark blue to sort of muffle it. You just imply a shadow, and it just softens it up a bit, just makes it look less harsh. So just little tricks. Just around his head, let's just darken it up just so that, again, just looks more realistic. Wow, he's looking cool, if I do say so myself. So let's just go over this line, neaten everything up. And then lastly, I'm just going to get some white and yellow. My brush is still a bit dirty, but it doesn't really matter. And all I'm going to do, look, I'm just going to put some highlights on his wing, just like we did with his underbelly. So all it is yellow and white, to kind of get like a Naples yellow. I'm just going to put some highlights, and then I'm going to clean my brush and get some white and cerulean blue. So white and cerulean blue, and I'm just going to do the same. I'm just going to come down and just make a lighter bluer line, just so it looks like the feathers are going into the blue, and they've got highlight. So again, it creates the illusion of texture. And have it fading away here. And then all I'm going to do is go back to my darker blue, which was that ultramarine blue, a bit purple and a bit black. And I'm just going to outline his wing. There we go. And I'm just going to put the feather lines back in. So now we've got the highlight, we'll complement it with the shadow. So just by putting a few lines, look, just straight lines with my thin brush. Just look like grooves in his wing. There we go. And then let's just outline his body with the same colour. So just finishing him off now, just outlining it, and I think it's pretty much done. I think we should zoom out and have a look. So I've signed her in the bottom corner. So you've learned how to do this blurry background with this light effect, which we've pushed back into the distance to make it look realistic. You've got the really bright colours one side and the dark colours the other side. You've got highlights, we've got grass, we've got shadows, We've got lovely darks and lights combining, warm colours, dark colours. And then we've got the light on our hummingbird, and we've got the darker shades to bring him forward and make him push the background back. So a really, really hyper realistic hummingbird. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial. I know it's a long one and I know it's hard, but I think you can all do really, really well, and it's good to push yourself. So don't forget to tag me at mstewartpaintings on Instagram, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and please comment on the video. So take care and happy painting. Enjoy, guys. Take care. See you next week. Bye.